Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Kirby Triple Deluxe. That is a pretty weird name for this game. I'm not sure where the Triple Deluxe necessarily comes from. Maybe because it's like he has triple the sucking power. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense. It's a weird name. The story is, it's at least some sort of story compared to our previous Kirby experiences. Basically, Kirby, he's having a really good time. He's just living his best life in Dreamland, and then he goes to bed in his cute little home, and then suddenly he wakes up and he's like in this Jack in the Beanstalk kind of world. It's called the Dream Stalk, so it's like a bunch of vines, like really thick vines, and the plant just lifts him up into the cloud alongside with a lot of like pieces of Dreamland. So basically you're navigating along the Dream Stalk going from world to world, and that's how the level selection works. As Kirby wakes up from his home that has been lifted up in the air, he sees this like six-armed guy, and he has kidnapped King Dedede, and so we are off to rescue King Dedede. I just love that whole premise where, like, Mario, he goes after Princess Peach, but Kirby, nah, he goes after his previous nemesis, King Dedede. So I think it's pretty fun that, I really like the relationship between King Dedede and Kirby, where he's kind of like an anti-hero, where like sometimes he's the good guy, sometimes he's the bad guy. Most of the time nowadays, it's just basically he gets possessed, and that's why you have to fight King Dedede. The Beanstalk setting, I think, is pretty fun and unique. It's a nice twist compared to most Kirby games where you're just navigating through the Dreamland over and over again. The most unique Kirby game setting I can think of before this one would probably be Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards, where you're like going from planet to planet, but this is a nice setting, I think. This Kirby game is actually really diverse, and it's actually a breath of fresh air compared to all of the other Kirby games that I've been playing as of late. Most of them, the Game Boy Advance games and the DS games, all look the same. They're all that kind of like game engine, that all of that aesthetic. Ever since they remade Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, I feel like they've been sticking to that same sort of 2D look. So this was a nice 3D look for Kirby. The 3D model, it actually does look very, very nice for a Kirby game. I feel like they really were pressured to show off the capabilities of the 3DS in this game, so that's why they finally made the push to the 3D models. They utilize the 3DS a lot, kind of like whenever you watch like an old 3D movie, how they felt like they really had to shoehorn that 3D effect. They do that a lot in this game, where like things will come from the background and like shoot forward into the foreground, like, whoa, it's like it's coming right at you kind of effect. And for the most part, it's fine here, but it's pretty obvious that they are trying to showcase the 3D effect. Little did they know that eventually they would come out with a system that only works in 2D, so I cannot attest to how well the 3D actually looks in this game. Another feature of the 3DS that they like to utilize a lot is the tilt, like kind of the gyro function, where basically like Kirby will get into a crate, and then you have to tilt the DS in the direction that you want him to roll. And then some, like near the end game, they have you do more gyro kind of aiming controls there. One thing that I'm really grateful that they did not utilize is the mic function, where you like have to blow into the mic. I'm glad that they didn't do that to like blow away clouds or anything like that, because I've seen a lot of DS and 3DS games utilize that function, and it ends up just being kind of annoying. So obviously they thought so as well. They do use the touchscreen, but it's basically just to activate your like stored health item. You can store up to one health item, kind of like a potion kind of effect. Then I feel like the touch function works best that way, or maybe like a mini map. I like that they don't do important game controls on the touchscreen in this game. Tons of different moves in this Kirby game as well. Like in previous Kirby games, you get one power-up and he has like one or two moves with this power-up. So like say if you get the fire ability, you can blow out fire, or you can turn into the little comet thing that shoots straight forward for a set amount of time. In this one, if you get the fireball, if you get the fire ability, there's like a lot of different moves. Obviously you can can do the aforementioned dash and then the blowing the fire, but you can like actually aim the fire in a certain direction, or you can like make the fire go back towards Kirby and then turn him into like this flaming inferno. There's a couple different moves as well. It just seems like every power-up you hit pause and it'll tell you like 3 different pages of moves that you can do with this certain power-up. It's almost like a fighting game. Like, you really do feel like you're playing an entirely different character when you have a different power-up, and a lot of them actually make Kirby move differently. So let's say if you get the Beetle Power-Up, which is a ridiculous power-up in my opinion. It's like, okay, what should we have? We have a fire power-up, we have a lightning power-up, Beetle, of course, the classic element, and you just turn into a bug. And so I'm getting sidetracked. You get the Beetle, and instead of puffing up like Kirby normally does, he uses his wings and he can actually fly up faster. Or let's say if you do get the ice power-up, he kind of like ice skates across the land, and each power-up just feels really special and unique, and it just so many different moves. I constantly, whenever I would get super excited when I got a new power-up because I'd hit pause and just look at all the different moves that are available to me. It's really fun. Another one that has a ton of different moves would be the Circus Power-Up, which I think is another fun power-up as well, where like you can jump on a trampoline, you can juggle, you can turn the juggling things flaming, you can blow up this giant balloon which explodes, you can bounce on a ball, like just tons of different move sets. The main power-up that is often advertised in this game is Hypernova, and Hypernova is a kind of scheduled power-up. It's like you have to progress in certain levels using this power-up. It only appears at certain times, and it just basically gives Kirby extra sucking power. I don't know, like it's triple the sucking power, and basically it makes his inhale like this giant tornado, and these levels are specifically designed around this Hypernova ability. And so you kind of have these puzzles like where you want to suck up, or what time you want to do it, and then what time you want to blow the object back at the enemies. That's kind of the challenge using this power. And then there's a lot of fun animations, like Kirby can just, his stomach is like a black hole. He can just consume anything in his path, and I think that's one of the reasons why Kirby is my favorite Nintendo character, is just, he's so interesting, you know? Like, he is just like this tiny little innocent looking blob, but he could just devour the entire world if he really wanted to. And so you're coming across these like giant eels, and there's just this animation of him just totally annihilating them, or like the tree, the wispy wood. He's usually like the first boss in all the Kirby games. He just completely consumes this giant tree. Fun little animations like that, which make you feel really powerful. Even like the camera slightly turns like 20 degrees, so it looks like he's sucking up the whole world. There's a couple of times when he even sucks up like the health bar of the boss, like the HUD. It's really fun, and it does seem kind of gimmicky, but in practice it actually is pretty fun to get this Hypernova ability. You actually do get pretty excited when you see this little Hypernova seed. As far as collectibles go, there are sunstones hidden throughout each level. It's not like a set amount. It's not like 3 every level. Sometimes there will be 2, sometimes 4, sometimes 1, and you are collecting all these sunstones, and if you get all of the sunstones in the world, it will unlock a extra level in that world. And the extra level is pretty fun because it's basically, it takes all the functions of the levels in that world and combines them, and it's kind of like this final test of the world. Like, okay, you mastered all of these functions in each level. Now let's put it to the test and see how you go through all of them in a row. So it really is a fun reward. It is a good incentive to collect all the sunstones as you progress. It's not like they're that hard to find anyways. They're not just like completely hidden. As long as you have your eyes open, you should be able to find them. And there was only a couple times when I had to replay the level to get them over again. Most of the time they are pretty generous too, where they don't give you like a one-time shot to get it, and if you miss it, then you have to start over. They're pretty generous about that. Like, most of them will be in their own room, and And if you mess up the puzzle, the challenge, you can get out of the room, get back in, and you should be able to try it again. Along with the sunstones, they also have keychains, and this is kind of a fun little collectible to gather up. And keychains are basically little sprite images of sprites from previous Kirby games. So let's see, I just played Kirby Mass Attack. I think that was the latest Kirby game that I had played through, and you can get keychains of the mice, of the rodents in Mass Attack. So fun little references. Definitely a good shout out to Kirby fans and people who are just interested in Kirby's lore. It's fun to go through your keychain collection and look at all of them. And the keychains are not predetermined as you go through the level. So it's not like if I go through level 3-2, I might get different keychains than a second playthrough of 3-2, if that makes sense. And then another way to get keychains is at the end level, like the end minigame. You know, each Kirby game has an end minigame usually where it's like a bar charging and you shoot out of a cannon, and in this one, obviously, it's like on the Z-axis, so they're trying to like really utilize that 3D look. And so it's this bar that charges up, and then when it reaches max, it starts back over. So you wanted to get it max, and if you get the meter charged up and launch all the way to the first tier, then you unlock another keychain. Obviously, I always mess this up, and I always press A right after the meter is fully charged and it resets, so I don't get any reward. I did end up getting all of the sunstones, and the reward for that is you get a specific keychain. I think that's the only time that you get a predetermined keychain. I definitely say go for the sunstones to play all the extra levels, and it's just it really pads out the game length. I did not get all the keychains, however, because it is random, and sometimes you do get duplicates of keychains, which is kind of a bummer. And there are actually a ton of keychains. I want to say I got near 100 keychains, and I feel like I wasn't even close. So definitely a lot of replayability that way. Another functionality of the 3DS that they try to utilize is you can use your coins that the 3DS gathers up. You know, the 3DS is actually kind of like a pedometer, and I think to get kids moving, they reward you these 3DS coins as you move, I guess. And so I've always been maxed because I never use these coins, and you can use these coins to purchase keychains as well. So if you really want to go for all the keychains, just take your 3DS out for a walk, and maybe you can be able to buy your way to 100% completing this game. I'm not sure if the final boss is locked behind getting all the sunstones as well. Obviously, I got all the sunstones as I progressed throughout the level, so when I did finally get to the end, I was able to fight the final boss. So I can't attest to whether or not you are required to get all the sunstones to fight the final boss. I love the final bosses in all the Kirby games. I just really like the settings of them all, where at first you go to Greens and it's all peaceful and happy, and all the characters look so cute. And then as you progress, when you finally get to like the last boss, it's like this primal evil that Kirby has to face off. Like the final bosses of Kirby games are just super dark, and I like how Kirby just goes into it head first. He just devours anything that gets in his path. He doesn't care if it's like the primal evil. I want to say in Kirby 64, it's like this giant bloodshot eyeball creepy looking thing. Like all the bosses are nightmares. I think that actually is one of the final bosses in a Kirby game is Nightmare. And this game is certainly no exception. The final boss was really, really cool. The main antagonists of this game are kind of like these bugs, obviously, because it's like this dream stock. So like the denizens of this world are like little plant like life forms, and so the bad guys are these bugs that are like kind of like parasites. So the final boss was like this really cool looking bug, bee queen looking thing. All the boss fights are actually pretty interesting, and they are actually pretty involved. I feel like a lot of older Kirby games that I played through, you kind of just tough it out. Like Kirby has enough life force that you can just get as many hits in as possible, invincible and not worry about your own health. In this one, the boss moves are actually pretty choreographed, and you actually do have to dodge them. Like I mentioned before, they like to utilize the background and the foreground a lot, kind of like Donkey Kong Country Returns, where you're using the barrels to blast your way between the background and the foreground. The bosses do that even, and so like to dodge the foreground that you're in, you have to like blast to the background. So you actually do have to think while you fight these bosses, and they are all pretty unique. I want to say only one time you fight a repeated Kirby boss. Actually 2 times. I think you fight the Wispy Woods guy, and then you fight the cloud spiky guy with the one eyeball that has like lightning come out. But other than that, the bosses are all pretty fun and diverse. The music is pretty catchy, but then again, most Kirby games have a pretty catchy soundtrack. Definitely something that I could listen to in the background. The game length is also pretty good. I want to say it was around 7 hours, which I feel is pretty appropriate for a Kirby game. That's like right when you get to the point where you are at your peak of enjoyment, and then you start like your attention towards Kirby starts going downhill. So I feel like 7 hours is a good game length for this, at least in my opinion. And then if you do want to pad the game out, there's a couple of different game modes that you can do. You can do the arena, where you like kind of like a boss rush mode, and then you also unlock a pretty fun mode. And I'm not sure if this was because I 100% completed this game besides the keychains, but you do unlock King DDD mode, and it's basically like you play through the whole game as King DDD. I think previous games had you play as Meta Knight, and there is also like this little time trial countdown on your bottom screen. It can kind of work like a speed run mode if you are into that kind of stuff. Overall, like I said, I've always had the mindset that Kirby is my favorite Nintendo character, but I've never been too crazy about his games. I think my other favorite Kirby game is the Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards. But you know, typically these games, they don't really wow me, they don't really amaze me, but this game was actually really, really good, and I'm surprised that it was sitting in my backlog for so long. I think I will give this game a 4 out of 5. Probably the best Kirby game I've ever played, dare I say, at least in recent memory. At least since I've been doing these casual reviews, this is the best Kirby game I've ever done a casual review on, so definitely don't sleep on this one. You can get it used from GameStop for pretty decently priced, which I would definitely recommend if you're into Kirby games. I actually think now that I have experienced 3D Kirby, I might have to look into getting Planet Robobot or Star Allies even. Both of those are definitely on my radar now, having played this game. Well guys, that should be it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Kirby Triple Deluxe or just Kirby in general. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!